So far in this chapter, we have been working with blending modes, and we actually had a lesson on fill and the difference between fill and opacity, but we've concentrated on blending modes as they interact with the layers panel. And I did mention to you a little bit earlier that it's not just for layers. A lot of the tools that we use can work with blending modes. In your work folder, open up behindclearblending.psd, a little work file here that we can play around with. Now I've got 3 layers in here. I've got one that's full of voids, and I've got one called test, which doesn't actually have anything in it. Let's start with test and select it. Now I'm going to come over here and pick up my paintbrush tool. Now whether you know this or not, you do have blending modes for your paintbrush and a lot of the other tools. You have 2 new ones that you don't see in the layers panel, and that is behind and clear. We'll talk about those in a second. If I come over here with my paintbrush, let's choose a color in swatches, something nice and pretty. And I come over here and I begin painting. I am in, by default, the normal blending mode for the brush. And what does that mean? Well, it's what we would expect normally if we were painting on a canvas and we had a brush laden with a bunch of blue paint. Okay, just a normal way to paint. That's fine. But check this out. Go up to the word normal and change normal to dissolve right next to it. Watch what happens when I paint with dissolve. It's quite a different look, isn't it? Kind of a fun way to paint. But we're not done yet. Do this. Change to a different color, like maybe a yellow. So I'm painting now with yellow. Come back up here again and change to something like screen. Now understand, when I begin painting, I've got that nice solid yellow. The only time the blending mode is going to interact with something is when it has something to interact with. And it has to be in this layer, because this is a blending mode for a brush in a layer, and we have blending modes for the layers. This is a different area. But watch what happens when I come over here and begin painting over the blue. See it change color? Well, it's blending with that other color, and based on the color I'm using, screening almost always lightens. It's lightening the color up. If I go back up here again and go into, say, something like multiply, now you'll notice the color here is the same. It's not interacting with anything. But if I come over here and begin painting, see how when it gets to that other color, it begins to darken. Blending modes on brushes. That's actually pretty cool. Let's do this. Let's come over here and turn off test and go back to the birds. I want to show you the 2 that are up here that are only available for a brush, and that's behind and clear. Now remember, we are on a separate layer. Okay, let me select that so we can paint on it. I'm going to come over here with my paintbrush tool, choose a color. Now if I come over here and begin painting, let's go ahead and take that back to normal. You know, it's what you think would happen. Well, it's just going to paint everything. It ignores the birds and just paints. If I change that to behind, now remember, I am in the same layer with those birds, and I begin painting. It basically will not allow me to change anything that's already been painted. It will only paint behind. So remember one thing. In order for this to work, you can't have lock transparency on, or it will not work. Now the other one is kind of predictable. It's called clear. Now as you can see, this tool now functions like an eraser. Don't let this happen to you. You use a tool like this and you change the designation of something like the blending mode, but then you forget that you did that, and it's a week later you begin using the tool again and it's not working, and you're going, what's going on with the tool? Must be broken because I'm not doing anything wrong. It will always remember the last thing you did. Now, if you're like me and you do a lot of changes to these tools over here and you want to just start out all over again, all you have to do, doesn't matter what tool you're on, is come over here. You'll see the designation of the current tool. That doesn't matter. Right-click your mouse on that little arrow, and you can reset all of the tools. Now, if I do that, it'll say, you sure you want to do that? I say, yeah. It will go back to normal, and everything else will be reset. So we've gone through blending modes, which are absolutely awesome. We've looked at them over here in layers, and we've looked at them with only one tool, the paintbrush. But that's not the only tool that does work with blending modes. Don't forget, you got them up here too. They're awesome to work with, fun to play around with, great creative tools.